the Conservation Commission meetings, Ed, Kim, Chris, myself. First thing I'm doing is 1 First Street for tree removal. Anybody here for that? No. Okay, so she...
Did you hear anything about the tree removal work in Kathy?
Yes, she's the one that wanted to do the emergency order, but just couldn't get it done within the 30-day time frame.
Oh, so
There were some trees that came down during the storm a while back that were, and I saw one kind of went over her fence, and she said it's one her little house. So, wasn't as fun. This one here. Lost it. This is for. So this is pine tree. That's the one I have to sign for the conditions. That's 327.
You were on a office assistant or? No.
Wants to work remotely from home.
It's kind of hard to do. I guess so. Yeah. That'll work out.
So I'm gonna make a motion for,
Tree removal.
tree removal.
I put a motion for emergency tree removal at 1 First Street.
And
I second.
All in favor? Guess I need to do something.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
No, someone comes in.
I have to print it out, guys, because I didn't print it in at the sign.
No problem, we'll wait till after.
So we'll do that.
Thank you.
This one. Done. It's 7:05. So 7:05, we have 47 White Island Road.
Evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Joe Webby Engineering. This is a septic system upgrade, 47 White Island Road, that abuts Monpont Pond. We are within 100 feet of the top of the bank of the pond, and you can see we have our 50 and our 100. And what we would like to do is install a Title V septic system about 70 feet from the pond. And this is secondary treatment because it's required at the pond if we're less than 100.
Okay.
And this has been approved by the Board of Health.
Anybody have any questions on it?
Where was it before?
The cesspool is right there
Okay.
in the driveway.
Any questions, Chris?
No, I'll make a motion.
I put a motion that we approve 47 White Island Road septic repair.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank
No,
you.
no problem.
Have a good night.
Let's see if I printed that one. That's not. Let's see, the next one's gonna be at 7:10. Anybody go by 224 River Street here?
No.
There's a complaint about trees coming down.
I can check it out maybe this weekend, so.
I can go Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon. I'm on an awake overnight tonight, and I'm doing first shift. I don't get out till 2:30 tomorrow. When I go in at 10 tonight.
You guys want
So
to-
Thursday I can do.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I drove by, it looks like it's a lot of stacked, looks like cut trees that are stacked up near. So I think it abuts the river. I don't know if they came down there or if they just cut them somewhere else and stacked.
Is that the yellow house?
Yeah, I think so.
I know 2 years ago, I think it was about 2 years ago, they had approval from the mosquito control. And they cleared out that area for drainage and everything else, I don't know that in detail, but I remember they had a,
Approval to do that?
Yeah, I can talk to Russ tomorrow over at the mosquito control project, just because I know him from being a retired commissioner. Send him an email, ask him to send us all of their approvals, and then it could just be that the stack's in the wrong spot and could be moved.
Yeah,
And we want to
yeah.
make sure it's not a fire hazard or anything.
and
Just not
Yeah.
stacking it next to the river, but,
There was,
yeah, somebody had called me.
the last two storms, there was a lot of natural
Yeah.
destruction from the storm, and we can't do anything about
No.
that.
So
So,
they can put them back up.
right? That would be awesome, or replant.
Okay, so being 7:10, 327 Wood Street, so it's a certificate of compliance. Anybody here for 327 Wood Street? Nope. Let's see. I think they're just trying to pass papers and needed the certificate of compliance. That's what that. I don't think I had made one of those yet. Anybody had a chance to go by that street, 327 Wood? No.
I drive by it all the time, but I haven't pulled in. It looks a lot better than it has
Yeah.
over the years,
Right,
but
take
I
it.
haven't gone in. Would you like me to have it
Yeah.
Thursday?
And then we can sign off on it.
Do we, can I take a copy of what they should have done so I can just check
Yeah.
them all off? Awesome.
We could actually, do you want to do, we could approve it pending you looking at it?
Yes, we could do that.
Yeah, you want to make a motion?
I make a motion for 327 Wood Street to be approved on the condition that it's approved by the conservation members that look at it on Thursday. I'm being myself, Mrs. Kibicki.
And
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Couple more minutes before 7:15. Another one I didn't, I can drive by this one, 699 from the street, there was a complaint of trees being cut in the wetlands.
That's true, I live near it.
Yeah,
Which one's 699?
I'm not sure. 699 would be
Is
on
this?
the right side.
On the right side, it's the 7th and 9th house, right after Old Plymouth Street, directly across from it.
Oh, okay.
Right, kinda, like, I think it's the 4th house on the right between Circuit Street and like the recycling center, right there where where the swamp and the river, and like the marsh area, look, that part that's dry often in the spring, and if we have a nice hot summer,
Yeah.
and then goes into the full swamp.
This was, we did last meeting, was the Pine Street Bridge, we just never signed.
Okay. So the people were here saying,
Yeah, who was here for the last
were you
meeting?
here for that remotely?
I was there.
So,
We were here.
Okay, yeah. That's it.
I also printed out the standard order of conditions, so I think they were looking for that.
it'll be awesome when it's finished. I'm the Pine Street Bridge.
it goes off the road, I had to leave from it because
Is anybody going by Plymouth Street?
Yeah, I'll drive by it, 699.
just do it.
You get us meeting. And then also, last thing before we get to the stormwater management was solar farm. Is anybody here from the solar farm?
Yep, that's okay.
You just wanted to talk about amending or changing?
Yeah, good evening, folks. Thank you, first of all, for adding us to the agenda. We know we got on it quickly last week, and we appreciate your time. We hadn't provided much to the commission in advance, so I quickly did an outline, and I will take 2 minutes to tell you why we're here.
Okay.
And then we're mainly looking just for direction from the commission on how you, what other information you need from us, how you'd like us to proceed. The project is an existing permitted project on River Street. It's a sister project to the one that's already been constructed. It's Lot 1B. So it was brought before the commission in 2018. It received an order of conditions. The project schedule was such that we requested and the commission granted an extension about a year ago. So the order of conditions is active. What's happened in the meantime since the original project presentation to the town is some new incentives have come about in the solar development area, where there's an encouraged program to co-locate agricultural uses and solar uses on the same parcels. So the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources program is one that the developer is looking into at the moment. They've gone ahead and developed what's called a farm plan. That's being reviewed at the moment within the state agencies. It would ultimately result in a slight reduction in the project footprint and less panels than was originally proposed, as well as a reduction in the impervious area. So Rob Grant is here representing the developer, which is River Street Associates. And what we mainly, the project isn't approved yet, but the reason we came in front of you is to essentially be proactive and understand what, if any, steps you'd like us to undertake with the prospective timeline of a state farm plan approval potentially coming out in February, and the project tentatively being slated for a construction start in the early spring, in light of the fact that the order is already approved. What information does the commission need?
Who is the contact at MDR for?
Rob can probably speak to that.
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can definitely get you that.
And what can you repeat to me exactly what it was called again?
The program?
Yes.
Massachusetts Department of Agricultural
I already know what
Resources.
MDR is, but what's the program they're doing?
So it's called a, go ahead, John.
It's part of the USDA. It's promoting agriculture under the solar panels.
So what the program is set out to do is to keep farmland from being bought up by solar developers and or misused as farmland. What the proposed change to the project would be we would be changing the mounting structure that the panels are set on. So, you're all familiar with the ones, kind of the standard ones now, where it's just steel I-beams, panels are bolted to that. These would be elevated up in the air about 10 feet. And this system would be what's called a tracker system. So it's a motorized system that follows the sun. So it's more productive. So we were actually able, if you want to put that, just hold this one down. So this is the permitted design from 2018.
The original footprint.
And what we've been able to do is actually, if this, all works out, we were actually able to eliminate and sort of stay in the original permitted area using this tracker system and sort of maintain
So you wouldn't be expanding the area?
No,
If
so-
anything, would be using less?
Yes,
Yeah, the red
project,
line
yep.
here is the original,
Still within the originally
Disturbance
approved limit
limits.
of work, no new, resource area impacts, and actually a reduction in pervious area, and overall reduction in disturbed area because of the smaller footprint of the project. So from a, order of conditions perspective, there's no new impacts proposed, but it is a slight change in terms of what came in front of the commission in 2018. And the order of conditions references that original plan. So what we weren't sure on is how the commission would like to handle if the farm plan and if the agricultural, co-project is deemed feasible and if it's going in that direction, what we would need to do in terms of making sure the order of conditions is current and approved in light of the February approval deadline and potentially a spring project startup.
Have you guys reached out to Brad Mitchell over at the Farm Bureau yet? I'm surprised that this doesn't fall under his preview because
It does not.
okay, because he'd be an excellent
It falls under
resource.
USDA.
It does, but that's what he does at the Farm Bureau, and these are the projects they support.
It has to go through the MDR first,
Yeah.
then it will fall under the Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau will take over and with the laws and directions how they proceed.
So-
And do you know if there's any peer-reviewed studies on these projects yet?
there's a pretty extensive program at UMass Amherst that is, the point of the program is to study what they call agrovoltaics, which is these projects where they're, working on growing crops underneath solar panels and sort of which ones are the best ones. As you might have figured out, we're working with John.
Yeah.
He's
It's been done in other states. The state of Colorado is doing it. They do agriculture under the solar panel.
No, and I ask because a lot of Colorado and others that are doing it, there's a lot of ground warming and other things, and there's not a lot of success for the actual vegetation and what's being grown.
Yeah.
And as great as solar is, and we talk about green, there's a lot more coming out, that it's actually more damaging than it is beneficial. And that concerns me with the food source.
What's that?
I'm not against it, but I'd like to see more scientific-based evidence for the environment and for human consumption, of course, which doesn't fall under us.
And Rob, is UMass an automatic component of the review or just MDOR?
Yes, they're actually, so it's MDOR and I believe it's the Clean Energy Extension at UMass Amherst. That's, so when we submitted our farm plan to them, they're reviewing it and
So
are going to give
So
us
there's
feedback.
two groups that actually do the independent review of the application, if you will, in terms of the opinion of the project with the agricultural use.
No, I do understand that, but I'll research too myself and see if I can find peer-reviewed studies also.
Sure.
But that concerns me. And it concerns me because you have wetlands there, you have the river there. It's going to consider food consumption if it's successful at the end. And there's just too many risks without me personally looking into it deeper. And
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to be here tonight, is just to understand any additional information or questions that we need to put together and provide.
I used to work for the State Reclamation Mosquito Control Board and MDOT, and I still work with the Farm Bureau. I work very closely with Mr. Mitchell, and I know there's a lot of experimental programs coming out. Does you guys just fall underneath the experimental and new, what it's going in?
I guess what aspect is experimental? I don't know. I wouldn't call any.
Well, under this plan, there's less panels, and they'll obviously rotate to make it economically feasible for you guys. I would think personally, like panels that are up higher move are better for the environment than a stagnant panel, which has already been approved.
No,
So
I
right now you're
can
just waiting
understand
for
that,
approval
but
from
the rays that still bounce off back into our
Is
ozone layer,
the-
it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The
Where they are,
agricultural
it's
review
still not
process
positive.
on the state level is is, DOER is the agency that oversees the solar approvals. They essentially, if you will, partner with MDR and UMass for a peer review or a co-agency review of an agricultural use. So it's in that process right now. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was February 22nd-ish. Towards the end of the February is what the expected date for the output of that review is. And that's just a newly discovered date, which is what prompted us to come in front of you. That was an unknown date until recently when they announced, we're about to have, the information. So the expectation on the farm plan review is within a month or so.
Okay, so I would say probably then, once you have finalized and know that you're going to move forward with this, you want to come to us and try to make an amendment on your,
Correct.
yeah.
That's what we
So
would
that we
like
can
to do,
push you
but we
on the
wanted to know
agenda.
what we needed to put together to be proactive, to start gathering any, information or get on the agenda, request to be heard,
So you're
whatever the
thinking-
process is.
Maybe the end of February, beginning of March, you want to then be?
Yeah,
come to a
I
meeting?
think that as far as best we know it right now, we would be prepared to meet again with
Right.
that determination in hand.
My last question would be too, and it's just because our residents would be curious to know, will this change the taxes that you pay on the property if you did, go solar agricultural? Because John gets a tax exemption for his farmland versus, and he deserves every right of it, but our residents are gonna ask.
Yeah, I guess that's a question for the
To
assessors.
be honest, I don't know. Yeah, no,
Right.
because
But my
it's
guess-
a good point.
That's a question.
Actually, the taxes would go up.
They'll go up on you?
Will go up on this because I'm putting a solar panel on my property behind where I live on 69 Summer Street. As soon as they put the panels up, it goes to commercial.
Okay.
The taxes go up.
Well, this is already zoned commercial.
Right,
so-
no, I'm just
So
saying,
you're- so you
under
will-
61A, once you put solar panels on, the taxes go
So
up.
you can't get an exemption for that because it's still
You
agriculture and farm?
you can't get an exemption because you're changing the use of it.
Well, I guess, yeah. what-
Now it's gonna be a
little-
dual use. If it's a dual use, then they might reduce the taxes, maybe go up other than, let's say they're for agricultural at a certain level, then they have to go up to meet both sides.
Yeah, so we're kind of coming at it from a different way where this was commercial.
Right.
We're making it agricultural. If you went about it the other way, like John's saying, it would raise
Yes.
your taxes.
But I just want to make
You
sure
can't keep
that,
it agricultural and put solar panels on it because that's not fair to the residents of the town of Halifax.
no, I 100% agree, but if they should be reducing you a little bit because
Yeah,
we're
it would
going the
change.
other
We can
way,
certainly
would
talk
have-
to
I
the
want-
town
I wanna
assessor
make-
on how they would handle that.
I just want to make sure you're being treated fairly.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be
Yeah.
difficult.
I wouldn't own the land, I would just be a renter on the land. That's
yeah.
about it.
Okay.
That won't affect
Do you
me
have a
because
calendar on you?
it would be
'Cause I have it by
the
phone.
landowner,
No, I support you 100%, Johnny. You do so much for the community. But I want to see everybody be treated fairly. And then I had another question, and
So that's the first.
I lost your email.
Rob.
I was gonna
So let's see.
email after we first met you
Yeah.
and ask you. I do a lot with bees and different things, and I was like, his property has so many wildflowers and so many this. Would he host hives?
We
You
that's
know what I
certainly
mean?
something we can
At the
explore.
time, the Farm Bureau was giving out grants and free hives and things like, it,
That's actually something that the Clean Energy Extension at UMass is studying, is trying to co-locate, pollinating and.
no, I
things like
do.
that.
I think your area would be great, and it has a lot of horny bees and things like that anyways. They're super tiny and they're brown,
Mhm.
and they look like overgrown flies, but they really are bees, and they have a pretty obnoxious name. But bumblebees and other things would do great over there, and where you're protected too in other areas, and where you're agricultural, you don't, there's not a great deal of area where you have to worry about drift, either from organized mosquito control. The private applicators and others,
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think you
'cause there's
guys
so
would do
much space.
pretty awesome over there with it, that's all.
Okay. Yeah, we can certainly look into it.
Any other
I'll help you get the
questions?
free house.
Anybody?
Okay.
No, I'm okay.
Okay, so we can either put you on for February 22nd or March 8th. Either one of those.
Probably March 8th.
Yeah.
And then, by then, I can reach out to you if you don't have to like do an amendment. Or we can have that ready for the meeting.
Yeah, exactly what you would need for that amendment submittal. That's the information we would need so that we can, you know, get it to you within your agenda
Because we want to
timeline.
advertise it 10 days prior. I think that's-
We'll know also, I think we'll know more from MDR as the week goes on.
Okay.
The weeks, you know, the rest of this month.
I'd like to know who your contact is up there.
Yeah, I can find out.
That'd be awesome.
So we'll plan on March 8th around, say, 7 a.m. 7 a.m. 7 a.m.
If you want.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, and then we'll be in communication with your office in the meantime to fully understand what you'd like us to have prepared. And hopefully we'll have feedback by then.
With no secretary, do you want to assign someone to them as contact, as a point contact that can bring it to our meetings every other week if there's updates? And I don't mind volunteering.
Okay, sure.
Do you guys
you
mind?
don't mind volunteering to be the new secretary?
I was gonna ask that question too, and then I said, you know something, that's a good paying job.
Yeah, if you want to just shoot me an email, all my contact info.
No, I will, I'll put
At the
all your
bottom of the sheet.
contact information in,
Yeah.
and then you guys are okay with me being your point person?
Sure.
Sure, yeah. No, and that's what we had hoped, is just to really start the dialogue,
Yeah.
to keep the process moving and be prepared for the next meeting, so we're not, you know,
I'm
Wasting
fascinated
time
by it
and-
all and know a lot of different people, so it'd be really interesting. I have some
Great
questions
idea.
too.
Yes,
That's a great
I
one.
don't-
There's,
No, I'm pulling
yeah,
straight.
and there's also a
Oh,
description of
straight line, that's what I'm planning for that one.
our kind of preliminary plan, and
I will, I'll shoot you my information, I'll also shoot you an email with Brad,
Yeah, the ones
CC
they're
on it,
putting
and I'll
up there,
introduce
10
you
feet in
guys.
the air, they-
He's an awesome guy, and he used to be the executive
Yeah, he was.
director
Where you
of
give you a
MDR,
chance
Oh,
to-
so he has a lot of the different
Underneath it.
programs and things.
It's like,
great.
You know, and I hope Steve
Probably
Kenyon
the same
can have
way
that
as common in a
contact, because
greenhouse.
Steve's super awesome too.
but
Like,
you're
super
not-
awesome.
You're not
Great.
covering the whole thing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
They're all good, but.
I mean, it's a dual use,
Yeah, dual use
It's pretty awesome.
dual use, and it benefits everybody.
More hand than machine?
What's that?
Does it end up being more hand than machine?
No, you have to use some machinery,
Yeah.
small machinery, not large machinery. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
All right,
thank you very
well,
much for
thank you
your
very
time
much.
tonight.
Thank you, have a good day. Are we ready to vote?
No, it's just a discussion.
Just a discussion.
Oh, no, I didn't know if we needed to vote me in to be the point person.
No.
Is it an informational meeting?
What's that?
This is an informational meeting.
Yes.
Yes, just a
So you
discussion.
just,
I don't think you'd ever vote, but,
And then just me as a point person, John.
no problem.
I'm in all the time if you need me, and they know how to get a hold of me over at that.
Appreciate it.
No worries.
Thank you very much.
Thank
You're welcome. Thank you for coming in. Thanks for
you.
coming and being proactive too. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Have a good night.
you too.
Please reach out, feel free. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a good
Happy
night.
New Year.
This is 7:15, discussion on stormwater management updates.
All right.
Hello again.
Hi. You've met me before.
Yeah, I
I'm
met you.
Sarah
We have a new
Nelson.
person here.
And this is Cambria. Yeah.
Hi, Cambria.
Hi, nice to meet you. Nick Cohen was with us last time for the regulations, but yeah, we're. I actually have cards. It looks like a lot. I'll make it. We. If we sit here, are we on camera and does that matter?
I think it's fine with you.
Okay, I
You
don't.
can turn the camera over.
Okay,
It's
I don't-
you.
And away from us.
I don't
so-
need any zooming or anything, but yeah. So I guess everyone has a packet. So we're here. I don't know how much. Kathy, did you end up forwarding that email to the group
I believe I did, I
beforehand?
sent that out to you, right? The
Did anyone
information.
get a chance? We're gonna go over everything either way, but I'm just curious if anyone read, did any ahead of the game reading?
I just glazed over it personally.
Okay.
That's just the
Yeah.
one-page fact sheet was the only
Yeah.
thing that was attached to the email.
So yeah, so basically we're, I guess I'll give you some background on why we're here, and we can use this sheet as a little guide on our conversation to start. And this is what we circulated to you guys over email as well. So if you recall, I was here with Nick in the spring to help you all develop the regulations that go with your stormwater management bylaw. So Halifax has a stormwater management bylaw that was passed in 2019, but it didn't have any of the implementation details associated with it that actually made it usable and enforceable. And so we developed those regulations so that there were actually details so you guys could enforce it. And that was a requirement under your MS4 permit, which is your Halifax's stormwater permit. So basically the reason this bylaw and regulations exist, in addition to protecting the water bodies of Halifax, is because Halifax has a stormwater permit from the EPA that says you have to implement these bylaws and enforce them. And the Conservation Commission is the authority to do such a thing. So that's kind of bullet point number one is, what's the MS4 permit? It's the stormwater permit, and it's, EPA enforces it, and did I miss anything? Yeah, one of the requirements is that you have to enact various bylaws and regulations pertaining to stormwater management. So, like I said, the bylaw was passed in 2019. The regulations were passed this past spring. But when we were working on the regulations, we realized there were several problems with the bylaw that we wanted to update. But that has to go to town meeting, so we couldn't just do that. And so we talked to Charlie, the previous town administrator, and he said, let's do that in 2022 town meeting. So that was part of our, we have a contract basically to assist you all with stormwater management every year, and this was part of our contract for the year was let's update that bylaw and make it ready for town meeting in 2022. So that's
running out of time then.
What?
We're running out of time then to get a article in front of the selectmen.
Exactly. So that's why we conveyed some urgency about this, and why we really needed to be here tonight. So we have the bylaw updates ready to go as far as we're concerned. We have a couple. So that's kind of the next thing in the packet is this right here is the bylaw with track changes and comments in it that we are suggesting. But the yellow ones are what I wanted to go through with you all tonight and basically get your buy-in, get your comments, figure out make decisions. So we're hoping today is a working session where we can just make all these decisions, hash them out, and by the end of the evening, we have a bylaw that's ready to go to be at least to get an article ready to go. And we think that's doable.
And then we're gonna have to have a joint meeting with the selectmen because they'll have to vote and we'll have to vote, and they're gonna have questions for us too.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually good to know. So yeah, because Cambria has been in touch with the new town administrator. Now
Mr. Thorne,
his
Ed.
name. What?
Ed Thorne.
Ed, right. So, but did he mention that there'll have to be a joint meeting?
We haven't specifically discussed the article yet, yeah.
Okay.
No,
So,
our
yeah.
new Board of Selectmen's been working together like that, so
Okay.
to be prepared.
Okay. So great, yeah. So this is really we gotta get this done. We're hoping by the end of the evening, we've got a solid understanding of what changes you wanna make, if any, and then we'll go back to back to work tomorrow and get a draft ready to go for town meeting. So yeah, basically we're hoping to step through this with you all. We don't have to read the whole thing, but I highlighted the comments I really want to talk about. But just to give you a little background on this bylaw as a whole before we really dig into it, and this is Roman numeral 3 in the fact sheet. We said, what are the main components of Halifax's stormwater management bylaw? So the point of the bylaw is to control all the bad impacts of stormwater, and specifically stormwater that is coming from both construction sites and then from sites that were undeveloped but became developed or redeveloped. And the way it's written right now is it only applies to sites where there is land disturbance and 1 acre or greater. So if you have someone coming in and they're planning to disturb half an acre, they don't have to apply for a stormwater permit. But if you have someone who's disturbing an acre or more, they need to follow all the requirements in this bylaw and regulations and apply for a stormwater permit with you all. So it's like an additional permit that you all have to deal with in addition to all the wetlands permits. Which is another thing that kind of in the second half, we wanted to go through this, shouldn't actually take that long even though I know it looks thick. But then the thing we wanted to kind of talk about after going through this is just implementation in general and have a conversation with you all about how we can make sure this, you know, how are these permits actually going to get processed and approved and stuff like that. Because I know you don't have a secretary, let alone a conservation agent right now, so.
Some things would go through the clerk's office too, like other departments
Yeah.
or whomever takes money. But we'd have to, is that Sandy to talk to?
For the bill, for the payments, we take the checks here,
Okay,
like for, yeah.
okay. So we,
But it's a lot more than just processing like administratively. It's like making sure that someone is designing a project that's not going to cause flooding or cause excess phosphorus from leaving the site in the form of stormwater. So it's making sure they're designing a stormwater pond that's properly sized, that's removing 90% of total suspended solids. Like, there's a lot of very specific requirements in here that really do require a technical review.
so should we, the next time they come in, should we ask the highway department and the board of health to come in with us? Because if there's flooding, then you have arboviruses. If there's flooding, it affects the highway department. And the highway department works so well with conservation and does a lot of stormwater management anyways and has a lot of the responsibilities. Then I wonder, stormwater management in general should really be a team thing.
Yeah.
And the municipality and everyone should work together.
To
But I'm
you're
just
saying to
curious
review the
if-
permits? To review the applications would be a joint.
No, we can review,
process.
but to implement and to check on and enforcement and
Yeah.
all of those things. Especially with the not having an agent right now and having all the technical ends of it things. And when it comes to storm management, some people have to be licensed, some people don't. There's so many complications in the Clean Water Act, and it's going to be amended by the federal government again. So,
Right, but all you have to really stick with is your bylaw, not the Clean Water Act. You know, you just have to make sure people are following the rules of your bylaw and your regulations. And then if the Clean Water Act, you know, if the MS4 permit changes and says, Halifax, you need a new bylaw, we'll tell you that. But for now, like, just, you know, you just
Right.
need to focus on implementing what's here. But yes, I agree that, you know, it's really one of the keys to proper implementation is communication among departments. But when we implemented this bylaw and, you know, Charlie and others felt pretty strongly that the Conservation Commission should be the authority.
yes, absolutely, but they had a lot of input and there was
That you
great
did, right.
communication, and I'd hate to lose that
Yeah.
again.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's go through the bylaw, get that checked off. Yup.
Just want to ask you a question before I forget. So, as you've worked with other towns, correct?
Yep.
And you've worked with other towns for many years.
Yep.
This is new to us, but it's,
Yep.
you've been with them. Have they ever asked that when people submit prints, that they submit a drawing that is specifically for the stormwater by itself? As opposed to being part of
Absolutely.
an actual plan?
Absolutely.
Which we, you know, the building can be there, that's fine.
Yep.
But in certain instances, if you have a civil drawing of like the parking lot, specific to the stormwater. So they
Absolutely.
do that?
Yes, and actually, in fact, we only have the bylaw printed, not the regulations, but your regulations specifically say, here's what you must submit. You must submit a drainage plan, you know, what, I don't know, like,
All of the stormwater, like I said, the calculations that the MS4 permit requires, show us those calculations. Show us your O&M plan for your STUs for long-term maintenance. There's definitely a list, and that's to facilitate your review, so you're not sifting through, like you said, like a large packet. Where's the stormwater piece? It's here's our stormwater permit.
we don't want to see the lighting,
application.
we don't want to see
Yeah.
the fire hydrants, like, you know, we just want to see, and so the regulations say this is what you need to submit.
And the regulations were done amazingly. I wasn't a full member then, I was only associate member, but they were done very well. I was really impressed.
Awesome, that's great to hear,
Our regulations are excellent.
That's great to hear. I hope so. And I think once we get the bylaw updated, and then you'll have like an excellent package altogether. Because right now it feels like, ooh, the regulations are in really good shape, but there's a couple things on the bylaw that we really want to fix.
Oh, we
So-
were in a time frame back then too to get this down.
Exactly.
Yeah,
We
it's
just had to
just-
check that off, and we didn't have a town meeting to, at that point it was too late to get an article on town
Yeah.
meeting, so. So this'll, once we get this passed, then, you know, it'll just be about implementation. You'll have a really solid document to work off of, and it'll just be about implementation. Any other questions before we launch into the nitty gritty? Okay. Okay, so basically, we'll just go through this. You can kind of skim the whole, you know, the bylaw as we're going. You can skim my other comments as we go, but the only comments we're really going to talk about are the yellow ones. The other ones are all like, they're all very minor. It's like, hey, there's a definition that should be in here. There's a typo, things like that. And maybe what we'll do is after we go through this and walk away, you can take your packet home and make sure that you're okay with all the other comments that we didn't discuss, and email us if you have any questions about that.
I like the blue box.
The blue box.
But add consistency so they match what our regulations are. I
Yes.
think that's fantastic.
Yes, exactly. So a lot of those were like those blue boxes, there's no highlight there. I wasn't going to talk about it. It's just like, we should add this so we're consistent between the regulations. And
No, and that will leave a lot of confusion out
yeah,
too.
right.
That's
And if
awesome.
someone's reading one document or the other, they have the same definitions and
Okay.
things like that.
That's awesome.
So, all right. So the first, you know, the bylaw starts, section 1 is purpose and objectives. Actually, we didn't have any comments there. We just have a couple in the beginning. These are kind of general comments that I have on the first page. Most bylaws I've noticed have a severability clause, basically just saying if any part of this bylaw is wrong, it doesn't mean the rest of the bylaw is wrong. So it just protects you all. So I would suggest adding that in. I pasted the language that I would suggest adding in right there. Is everyone good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
The other thing that is a little more open-ended to discuss is that, and we can also circle back on this, but so Monpont Pond, as you probably all know, has a phosphorus problem. And so there's a TMDL, which is basically a state study that says, here's how here's how much phosphorus we need to remove from Monpont Pond to actually make it clean again. And in that document, there is a suggestion that Halifax, let's see, do I write? Oh, I didn't write exactly what they say, but basically the suggestion is that you include in your bylaw or regulations something specific, like an extra requirement for land draining directly to Monpont Pond, like draining in that watershed. So like, even though, for example, in this bylaw right now, if you have a project less than an acre, nothing applies. But you could write something like, if you have a project that's half an acre, you do have to submit a permit if you're on Monpont Pond, or if you're in the water.
I have a question. So we talk about an acre and larger, but what about those properties that are smaller that aren't following the federal label for different things and contaminants are getting in the pond, and there's no enforcement because it's an acre or larger? Because a lot of our homes and properties around Monpont Pond are
Right.
postage
Nothing's
size
gonna-
stamps.
Exactly.
So,
None of them are going to be an acre.
no, so
So I
you're,
wouldn't even limit it to a half acre, just
Yeah.
any land abutting the pond.
Yeah.
Needs a stormwater
Would
permit.
need that.
Okay, and then that way you at least have jurisdiction to, I mean, the stormwater permit requirements are pretty extensive. Like I said, you have to do calculations, blah, blah. You don't want to make every homeowner who lives on the pond do all that, but you could have a separate, like, if you live on the pond and you're doing...
If you have an existing home, you mean, or?
Yeah, so like say, I guess the question is, like if you live abutting the pond and you're planning to disturb, I don't know, how much, I don't know what a proper threshold is, like if you're
like 1,000 square feet.
1,000 square feet, like if you're gonna do an addition on your home, then you could trigger this permit. But maybe the requirement is you have to put in a rain garden or a rain barrel or something that's not nearly as intense as the requirement for the 1 acre sites. But it's at least something to try to mitigate this phosphorus that's right up against the pond. So you are interested in doing something like that?
I am. I don't.
I mean,
Yeah, obviously less, not as
Definitely
intense as the 1
something
acre.
more simplistic.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Something's going to be
the pros are obvious. It's, you know, protection of the pond where you wouldn't have any leverage to force someone to do that otherwise. The cons are, you know, it's potentially more work for you all to review. And there could be residents who are upset that they just want to put an addition on their home and now they have to put a rain garden in or something.
They're upset anyways.
Okay.
Like
okay.
it's, and a lot of it's gonna be education. I mean,
Right.
they don't know what they're supposed to do now. I mean,
Right.
they're doing oil changes next to the pond, because there's no education.
Wow, okay.
And the Watershed Association does an excellent job, but they had some different things. like-
Yeah.
And I know that the Board of Health, when God rest her soul, before Kathy passed and retired from Halifax, had tried to go through the state and for different grants to put the filters in the catch basins and things. So yeah, it's just a great idea, and there's been a lot of effort to clean the ponds up over the years.
Okay.
But I know she didn't get the grant at that
Interesting.
time, but
Huh.
just,
Right. I
there's a
mean-
lot of small things that I think would have a huge impact to improve our ponds.
Exactly. And if you're only capturing sites greater than an acre, you're not actually going to be implementing that much treatment. You'll only have like one project every once in a while.
Right, and the ponds are still damaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. That, I mean, the Mass DEP will be happy with that because they recommended that in their TMDL. And I think that'll be great for the pond. It'll mean more permits for you all, but hopefully they'll be simple permits.
Yeah, we might keep it simple, like how they're
Yeah.
gonna gather the water, runoff, or
Yeah.
whatever else, like.
One thing I've done with one other town is basically we said, you know, if you're a small project, you just have to put in one treatment practice. And then we just listed a bunch of options. A rain barrel, a rain garden,
Oh,
a
that's a
green
good idea.
roof, like, and they could just choose from that and they just have to put in one.
Right,
sounds like a
that's
good
awesome.
Okay.
And
But
Okay.
the list is there and it's not, you have
Yeah.
to come up with it and design it. It's
Right.
just-
Yeah, it's just
from this
like-
list and.
Whatever fits this
Okay.
project best.
Yeah.
And if we did rain barrels, we could involve the beautification committee. We could be like, oh, the beautification committee's doing these different things and giving their things away for free this day.
Yep,
And
right. Every
Yeah,
year
you-
there's a rain barrel making workshop or something.
They do, and they do a great job.
Yeah.
They've implemented them. They've got them
Yeah.
for gigantic discounts for the residents
Cool.
and things.
That's
and
great.
All the departments really work well together on it.
Okay.
So I think it would be feasible, and I think the residents wouldn't be so upset because there's an option for a cheaper way to do it.
Yeah.
And there's more departments and boards, you know,
Yeah.
working together and doing for the residents.
And like you said, it's also just an opportunity for education as
Yeah.
well. They'll say, why am I putting in a rain barrel? And then it's an opportunity to learn
That's
what's
fun.
wrong with the pond.
And then the permits can get expensive for the smaller projects.
Yeah.
Like the ones we're talking about that are abutted. Can we do a scaled permitting fee?
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I guess that also brings up, so one piece of context I didn't give is, so when we wrote the regulations, we said, you know what, the bylaw is what it is, so we have to write the regulations to be, consistent with the bylaw. So when we decided, okay, we'll go back to town meeting in 2022 for updates to the bylaw, we also knew that coming with that would be subsequent updates to the regulations to just, make sure everything's consistent. And so the fee structure is in the regulations. So once we update the bylaw, then we can go into the regulations and say, for those small permits, homeowner permits, and then decide whatever is reasonable.
So is it possible to have an article ready at town meeting? So if the new bylaws pass, we're 100% prepared with the amended regulations, that the article would be dependent on the vote of.
Yep.
And then if the bylaws are approved, we can go right into the regulations, so we're not waiting till October's town meeting or 2023.
Here's the thing about the regulations that's great. You don't have to go to town meeting for the regulations.
Excellent.
You all have to hold a public hearing, and that's it. So that's why not all the details are in the bylaw. Then you can change the fee structure whenever you want, as long as you advertise a public hearing like 14 days ahead of time. And then it's just right here, you change the regulations. So that's why we keep the high level stuff in the bylaw and the details in the regs.
Awesome.
So basically we were thinking we'd have we were actually thinking we'd get the regulations ready to go even before town meeting. You could even approve them pending town meeting approves the bylaw. And then once town meeting approves bylaw, everything's just set and done.
That'd be awesome.
So you'll probably be seeing us a couple times more in the next couple months. But yeah, so that's what we were thinking, but great questions. Okay, great. So we will have to work up that language for the Monpont Pond addition. And just to clarify, so are you thinking houses abutting the pond only? Houses in the watershed of the pond?
It has to be the watershed to be consistent with all the laws, otherwise you're gonna have loopholes, inconsistencies, and also much of other things. So
Okay, great. So in the watershed.
that's only me though, I have a whole board.
You're making a good point.
Yeah, no, I think that makes all that water goes to the pond, whether it's next to the pond or not. So I think that makes sense. Okay, so if you keep flipping, there's a lot of...
Talking about the watershed, I don't want to get to the point where we're telling the highway department and others though that they can't sand and salt that strip of 50
Yeah, they
acres.
don't get done.
I don't want to get that strict only because it's curvy and it's safety and it's all that over there.
Well, don't worry, there's nothing in the bylaw that says anything about
Some
the highway department.
some towns have those rules.
The only thing that would trigger the bylaw is if you're doing a construction. So sanding and salting doesn't trigger it. But yeah. Salt is a tricky one with the balance between safety and pollution. Okay, so, all right, the next yellow one, another thing I should add to the comments is I just realized we don't have page numbers. So we will add page numbers. So I don't know what page to tell you to go to, but it's the next yellow comment in the definitions. And it's pretty simple. It's just that, so there's a definition of new development and a definition of redevelopment. And your redevelopment definition is quoted straight from the MS4 permit, and the new development is not, and it's just different. And I was just hoping to take that language from the permit, which is in that red box. New development is defined as any construction activities or land alteration resulting in total earth disturbances equal to or greater than 1 acre. So it also gives you that threshold. So yeah, is everyone good with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Next page, Stormwater Authority. Okay, so the only thing we wanted to point out here is, actually I'm glad you brought up the whole regulations versus bylaw thing earlier. Because regulations are easier to change than the bylaw, and you don't have to go to town meeting, sometimes people like keeping certain details only for the regulations. And one of those details that you could consider moving only to the regulations is that the Conservation Commission is the Stormwater Authority. There'd be no reason to move it unless you felt like it could ever change. But you could, under the definition of Stormwater Authority, say something like the authority, the definition of that is the authority identified in the regulations. And then the regulations say the Stormwater Authority is the Conservation Commission. But if you feel it's never going to change, there isn't a reason to move it.
It becomes a best practice thing, moving it away
Right.
from conservation and removing it from the bylaw.
Yeah, like you're saying, it's best practice just to get
Yes.
those details in the regs.
To have them here, but it's also best on the conservation.
And if I'm torn about that. I mean, because some other people will point out, well, like, you don't want to make it too easily changeable. Like, you don't want someone to come in here and say, no, the authority's actually me. Like, public hearing, passed, done.
Yeah.
So if it's something you really feel like is never going to change, just leave it in the bylaw. If you think, oh, wait, one day the highway department might take over this responsibility, then maybe move it to the regulations.
I'd leave it in the bylaw, and if the highway department wants to take it over,
It'll
they
go
can
to
bring
town
it to
meeting.
Mount Meeting.
Okay.
That's something that should really stay
Yeah.
with the residents.
Okay.
And we have a lot of wetland here, and we have a lot of agriculture. We have a need to keep it in conservation.
Yeah, right, and you have different interests than the highway department in terms of protection.
Exactly.
So, okay, that sounds great. We will note to leave that in, and that really could go either way, so thank you for your opinion on that. So the next page is the same question, except with regards to the threshold of 1 acre. So another detail that you could only put in the regulations is the 1 acre threshold. So that if one day you wanted to change it to all projects greater than half an acre, you could do that just by changing the regulations rather than changing the bylaw. So in the bylaw, you'd say something like, what did I write? Where am I? This bylaw shall apply to all land disturbing activities that may result in land disturbance equal to or greater than the thresholds outlined in the regulations. And then you'd outline them in the regulations. So it's the same question. Is this a detail that you don't think is ever going to change and we want to keep it in the bylaw? Or do you think you might want to lower that threshold someday and therefore let's move the detail to the regulation?
I really like Kathy's idea of moving it to a half acre and just using the word that it abuts the pond.
Yeah, I think that is this regard to all projects though?
This is everything.
This is everything, so in the whole town,
I
so just
think
in
we-
the whole town.
I think we should
Yeah.
keep it at the acre of the whole town.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But near the water, obviously.
yeah,
And then the
Yeah.
water is when
We can,
is when the threshold gets smaller,
Yes.
it's
yeah.
smaller and it's not defined by a number, but just being abutting.
Yeah,
In the
just being in
watershed.
the, right.
Yeah, in the watershed.
Okay, so in that case, you feel like 1 acre is pretty good to go, we'll just leave it in the bylaw. Okay,
what do you think?
I like it. I'm just concerned about the watershed and the ponds, and I
Yeah, no,
do
this
like
is
it.
a-
And I think
this
it's
we're
really
gonna add
good
that
the
to
way
the
it is.
bylaw
That's
for sure.
awesome.
We're gonna add that.
It is, because what if Robert's Ponds or some of the other ones in town start to have the same issues, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Kathy's idea, it's concrete this way. I like it.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
really good.
Okay. Okay, the next question is a biggie. So the other thing that I haven't mentioned yet that triggers a stormwater permit, in addition to being a project over an acre, is application of biosolids. So this is not something that is typically in a stormwater bylaw. It's kind of, usually falls under Board of Health jurisdiction. However, Kathy, the old health agent, did you mention she passed away?
Yes, she
Oh, I'm
did.
so sorry, I didn't know that. I had never met her, I just heard that she was really a proponent of this biosolids. And I think it was because she was like, I know people are not applying biosolids properly, it's causing pollution, we need some way to catch these projects. And
Yes.
so she wanted the Conservation Commission to have jurisdiction over that in some way.
It's needed.
It's needed, okay.
And
that's- yeah.
it's a growing concern,
Okay,
and we might as well be proactive on the local level.
yeah. Okay, so that was where we really needed your context for this. How needed is it? It's not typically in this kind of bylaw, but if it's really needed and it's really not feasible to have the Board of Health make a separate regulation to implement it, then we'll keep it in.
COVID's staying, we're gonna come off the pandemic, it's gonna be an epidemic, and then
They have too
they'll
much
have
to
a
do.
lot of other things to do.
Yeah.
Like the plastic bag ban and things like that, they allowed to go to the highway department and other things, so.
Okay.
And they're correct, it affects
Yeah.
the water body and other things, and until it becomes a public health threat, it does belong in conservation.
Okay.
Like Mrs. Dryden was 100% right.
Okay, okay.
Well, so we work with Bob and then also the highway department
Yeah.
under the contract that Sarah mentioned, so we'll just run this by Bob real quick and just make sure he's okay with leaving it in the bylaw and let him know that that's what your guys' feedback was as well. So we'll let you know if he has, for whatever reason, a strong opinion to take it out. I don't think that'll be the case, but,
No, I know Bob's been looking to work with the other departments, and he's been, you know what I mean, he's been a
Yeah.
really positive asset since
Well, and maybe
he's
he
been
could
here, just
help.
super busy with the public
Yes.
health threats,
Yeah.
but.
Right. Maybe he could also help implement. It's like you guys are still the authority, but when you get a permit application because someone's trying to apply biosolids, you pull him in and say, how does this sound? Does this look okay?
But no different than a building permit getting
Yeah.
approved, why
Yeah,
not?
right,
You know,
okay,
make sure everybody's doing everything correctly in each
Okay.
department that needs to be, you know,
Yeah.
makes sense.
okay, well then, that sounds great. The only thing there then is that the wording is just a little weird, where it basically says, it says something to the effect of, if you are applying biosolids, you need a permit, but you're exempt if you have all your state permits. Which doesn't really make sense to say you need a permit, but you're exempt if you have your state permits. So we would probably just change the language to say something like, you need a permit. The permit application involves coming to the Conservation Commission, explaining your project, and showing your state permit. Like, because there is state permitting for applying biosolids.
Yes, there is,
So-
and then they come in front, and then if you really have your state permits and paid, then we would exempt your fees, blah, 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 but you still need to do X, Y, Z.
You think you would
I like
exempt
it.
the fees?
If
Yeah,
they're already
they've done
paying the state and they already have the permitting fees,
Yeah,
it's really just a courtesy to the board, like, it's
Okay.
not fair to give them a double
Yeah.
whammy. But we should know and have it, and now that the town clerks don't get a lot of MDOT's information and things,
Yeah.
since a lot of the boards have changed the state's procedures,
got it.
how are we supposed to know what's going on when the state doesn't inform us?
Right, okay, so maybe we call it like an administrative permit or something. Something that doesn't make it sound like it's really a big permit application. It's just come in, talk to the commission, tell them what you're doing, and show them your state permits, and then you are exempt.
Right, unless we make our
Yeah.
bylaws stricter than state law, because that would be
Right.
different. But I'm sure we'll know that in the future.
Okay, we'll figure out wording there. We just felt like it was weird to call it exempt, but also say a permit is required. So we'll, just as long as you're okay with us tweaking the wording there to make it a little more understandable, and we'll circulate that final wording to you to double check.
If we fix it.
Um,
All the
okay.
other bylaws in town with the cross out lawsuits. I like it, it avoids it.
Okay, on the next page, we have a quick question. In the regulations, we decided that a public hearing has to be advertised 14 days before. And let me, sorry, I'm just catching up on what public hearing this is. Okay, so this section is saying what I was actually talking about earlier. Basically, section C says the Conservation Commission can amend their rules and regulations as long as they hold a public hearing with public notice 14 days before. But we actually said 14 days before
And
in
it says
the
7.
regulations, and it says 7 here. So which one would you prefer? We'll just make it consistent.
Isn't the open meeting law 14 days? Don't we have to stay with the 2 weeks?
Yes.
I think the open meeting law is 14 days now.
I think that's probably why
pretty
we
standard.
felt strongly to make it 14 in the regulations now that I think about it. So we should probably just change this to 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the 7's just a cleanup.
Okay. All right. We'll clean it up to 14. The next comment, also a quickie, I think. The bylaw references the latest edition of the Massachusetts DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, Stormwater Handbook or Stormwater Regulations. It basically says when you're designing stormwater treatment, go look at the Stormwater Handbook that the Mass DEP put out to make sure you're in line with that kind of treatment. The problem is it references the latest version, and that handbook gets updated. It's actually going to be updated soon. And so by referencing the latest version, we're referencing something we don't know. We don't know what's in it yet, and we're referencing it. So I would recommend changing that to the 2008 version, which is the most recent version that has come out.
What about saying most current version? That way we don't have to amend it each and every time a new version
Well,
comes
so
out.
that's exactly what it says here right now, by saying latest. The problem, and so it's tricky, and maybe this isn't quite a quickie, because the problem is, if you reference the most current version, what if that handbook comes out with a new version and it says something that you actually don't agree with? You don't know what you're
Really strict
referencing.
requirements now without no changes on your part. Your regulations and bylaw reference something that's way stricter overnight the minute the DEP comes out with the new handbook.
I say, yeah, I think 2008, if something comes up, we can always change it.
Right, and that's the thing, these regulations.
This is a regulation, so it's
Oh,
not.
actually, this is the bylaw. What we
This is the
could
bylaw.
do is actually take this detail out of the bylaw altogether
And add it to the
and add it to
regulation.
the regulations so that you can just change the, so we could say something like, the Stormwater Authority will utilize the criteria and information in the edition of the Mass DEP handbook that the regulations says. And then in the regulations,
And it would be, and then if it happened overnight and there's a change, the change happens in December, we don't have to wait till May, we don't have to wait till
Yeah.
October. I think that would be easier on the commission.
Oh, yeah,
And
'cause they-
fairer to the
Yeah.
residents.
yes, and it's not something that's worth going to town meeting over, so it really is a detail that should just be in the regulations. Okay, wonderful, we will do that. Next, what is this next one?
Section 6 through 10.
Oh, yes, okay, so sections 6 through 10 are all details. They're all sections that most towns only have in regulations, not in the bylaw. So like section 6, for example, is permits and procedure. It's saying, what do you want to, what do you need to submit if you want a permit? What is the procedure for all this? So this is kind of a sweeping change, but we recommend just, and also all of these sections are in the regulations already. So we recommend just taking these sections out of the bylaw
And just leave
and
that
just
regulation.
reserving them for the regulations entirely. So it would also make the bylaw a lot shorter and less intimidating, just kind of a cleaner document. And there's no point in being redundant between the bylaw and the regulations, then someone's just reading the same thing twice.
And it really is more of a regulatory issue too. It's not a bylaw issue.
Right, like-
Because the bylaw has to follow the regulation. It's documented that way in the bylaw.
Yeah, so the whole,
I don't disagree.
permits and procedures would be section 6. Section 7 is the stormwater management plan, which is basically saying, this is the plan you need to submit to the commission for your permit. And it's just all the details of what needs to be in that plan. Then section 8 is inspection detail, like once the site is actually under construction, it's implementation details about, you know, how the Conservation Commission has authority to inspect the site, things like that. Then section, what should be section 9, but actually just says section number, is the operation and maintenance plan details. So again, it's saying this is what needs to be included in your operation and maintenance plan. And then, so those would be the sections that we would just slash. Okay, wonderful.
So it's section 6 through 12 altogether, right?
It's,
Yeah, but
no,
it's
it's not actually 6 through 12. It is,
Through 8.
yeah, it's 6, 7.
Yeah, 8.
It's 6, 7, 8, and that section that actually doesn't have a number, but it just says section number sign.
At the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think those were our only yellow comments there. And then that was it, I think. Did I miss anything?
No, I don't think it is.
I think that was most of
I
it.
think that was it. So,
I just have one question for you.
yes, please.
Just on the advertising, the 7 versus 14,
Yeah.
I don't know if we do 14 days. I think we do 7.
I really don't know.
So there's, I think, this is so there's 2 different kinds of advertising. There's advertising for a public hearing when someone comes in for a, you know, for an order of conditions or something. That I think you do 7 days for.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, so that, and that's in your regulations, it says 7 days for that. What you would need 14 days for is a public hearing to change your regulations.
Okay, got it.
So
Okay,
it's,
yeah.
So yeah, it's less of a big deal to do the advertising for someone coming in for like wetland
Yeah, if you want
stuff.
to change something a little bit.
And you
Yeah,
want to give more notice.
exactly. You're changing rules, so you just want to, yeah, give more notice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I know, there's a lot of different public notice requirements in here. Okay, so that is that. We will, I guess the plan will be, we're gonna go home tonight, probably work on this tomorrow, just try to get it all set. Maybe get it to you by Thursday, or maybe end of the week, we'll say, just in case. And then maybe the following week, if you all could take a look, make sure you don't have any problems, and we'll kind of assume if we don't hear from you by the following week that it's good for the article.
Should we tentatively put them on our next meeting agenda?
25th. Did you want
Yes.
to come back on the 25th for any questions?
Like
Well, if you have anything to tell us.
tentatively, that way it's planned and we don't have to squeeze you in
I
and
forget.
worry about our postings
I mean,
and stuff.
you can certainly email us, and if we had something quick that, you know, we can resolve, we're happy to come back. This leads us kind of to our next point, is the regulations that we talked about will also be updating. If we wanted to come back to another meeting to discuss those updates, those are pretty minor, so, you know, we can discuss.
Can we
it
do
in
them as
the
a
meeting.
2-in-1?
So we were thinking maybe we would come back, you know, maybe later in February and just kind of a status update, where is everything at, where are the regulations at, the bylaw at. The other piece that we wanted to talk about, kind of that, the implementation, and kind of start to flesh out a little bit more, making sure that the projects that are triggering these regulations are getting caught. One of the things that we're working on is what does that stormwater permit application form look like, and so we can go over the application form with you, since that's what, you know, we'll be giving out to applicants. So we can come back at any.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, we were trying to work out the timing with the article, and I think actually,
February is gonna be too late to come back because
Exactly.
it's due,
Right.
we need to have the articles in by, last year it was March 1st.
okay.
So
Yeah.
you have less than 7 weeks if you
Yeah.
wanna put it on town meeting in May.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that we should just plan to be done with the bylaw, like basically, and like in 2 weeks. Basically, end of this week, we will send you our final
Updated.
copy. And by the end of the following week, you will send us any last questions or revisions or anything like that. And that way, because I think if we wait to come back for another meeting,
Yeah, unless you
it'll
come,
just be too, I just want to get this.
unless you
article.
come back to our next February meeting, and then we have it all hashed out, everybody's agreed upon, and then we're ready to go to the selectmen. Here you go,
Yeah.
conservation signed off, it's your turn. And now that we have an interim town administrator,
Yeah.
like Charlie was such an excellent communicator with all the boards, getting everybody's ideas. And he was the point person where you didn't
Yep.
have to worry about violating any open meeting law, no
Yep,
this, no that.
interesting.
Because he was the contact person.
Yeah.
And all you did was not reply all. Like,
Uh-huh.
I don't know how with all the new faces and other things in town hall, how this is gonna work out. Would it be inappropriate to ask if you guys could keep us updated of each department you speak to? So we're all on the same page and ready to go?
Yeah.
Should we invite Bob to the next meeting if he's available?
We did ask if he was available for this meeting. He wasn't able to attend, but we definitely,
We would
wanted
love for him
wanted
to.
him to.
Yeah, because I think he'd really like, I think he'd
Have Bob here before our next, like before obviously the March 1st date. Have him
Yeah,
here for.
have them here for the 2 weeks where we go over it before we're ready to go to the selectmen. Because then, if they have one of their department meetings, or if they always ask, does this board have an objection? Have you already been to this board yet?
Yeah.
It would just, we're 100%
Ready to
organized,
go.
we're 100% ready to go. Please, selectmen, do your job. Because at that point, it's in the selectmen's hand to approve,
Yeah.
and then we just have to be at town meeting to present it.
Okay. I'm gonna write that. Okay, so does that work out with the timing?
It does, if we can come back January 25th. We can double check those dates work. We're also happy to, since like I said, we work with Bob on several other pieces of the permit, to separately just set up a quick call with him and have walk through the changes with him, if we want to try to do that in the next 2 weeks. Or just check if he's available for January 25th and do it all at that point.
You can come in, how you doing? It seems to be doing good, the red lights are on.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering how you guys were doing. But I didn't want you guys to be like sitting around waiting for you to come back. I just wanted
We're holding them hostage.
At least you're good company, you know?
I hope so.
I'll be back in a little while.
Okay.
Okay, is it possible to get all your emails so we could just, if we go home, realize the timing doesn't work in terms of things, we could just email all of you and say, when does this work? When can we figure out when to meet? And that doesn't violate any open meeting laws, right? Just to discuss when we're meeting. So
Yeah.
maybe let's do that. Here, just everyone want to write their email on the back of this handout, and then we can just coordinate with everyone if January 25th doesn't work once we hash out all our details.
I mean, I can find it. But I haven't logged into it.
I try to remember.
I could probably log into it if I ask.
Susan's awesome.
Try to get it.
I might get into
And
mine
he
with
needs, if we're not gonna be at the select
or
board,
you spelled my name wrong.
he's ever doing a good job.
No, he was ready, she was ready.
Oh, stop.
Board.
It's a dot.
Like,
We can't talk about this.
all right, we got 2 big.
It's an employee issue. Yeah, it's gonna be executive session.
That late, I came in late.
I give her my regular email.
Alright, here's a couple of them.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
The other thing that we've been wanting to ask Ed, but maybe you all would know, is in preparing this updated bylaw for town meeting, how do we have to present, like for the article, thank you, like is track changes an okay way to show, here's what we're changing? Or do we need to write up every little change in a document? Is this anything?
It would be amended, so it would be an amended motion on the floor, like we're amending our bylaws for.
Yeah.
Then, of course, you're gonna for it to pass, you're gonna wanna give your best presentation
Yeah,
to town meeting.
yeah,
What are you comfortable doing to make that happen? Like, I'd suggest, like, there's no written
yeah,
way to educate town meeting and others. I do what you're comfortable with.
okay,
Like, you guys do a great job explaining it to us. And then just be prepared for those that 100% don't fully understand because they just need it toned down to layman terms.
yeah.
Like a lot of things at town meeting go as long as they do because
You
the
just have to-
presenter didn't put it in layman's terms.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so basically anything you need to do to get it across is okay. There's no rules about what documents you need to present.
The article has to be presented a certain way, and that'd be the selectmen.
Okay, we'll.
And they're different than Pembroke too.
We've been trying to get in contact with Ed, so we'll ask him that when we
Yeah,
do.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Ed and Caesar have split different roles too. I'm so confused on who does what.
Okay. Who's Caesar? Do you know?
I have IT.
He does something else too?
Yeah, they added to his list. He's got some administrative roles now too. I'm so confused.
Okay, wonderful to have everyone.
Yeah.
Now, let me just double check. There's, yeah, I'm just double checking I can read out everything. This is the one, what, is this Ed
Lane, L-A-N-E.
Ed Lane, okay, cool. Double checking.
A chicken scratch?
Yeah.
All right,
Dr. Lane.
But you bring up a good point. I'll just reiterate about I know we keep bringing this up, but we've included time to come to things like public hearings, town meetings, Charlie had us include time like that to make presentations, walk through regulations, look at potential, help applicants know, does your project need this permit, yes or no? So, we're definitely happy to keep, as this is still relatively new, kind of get the ball rolling, like we definitely can help out if you see any of those needs.
And Charlie was such a huge part of it that I feel like it's gonna hurt and be a little bit more of a struggle
Yeah.
to
Well, that- I mean,
get it
Well,
done.
change is always happening.
right,
No, I
change
know
is
that.
always happening. I mean, that's also partly why we're here now and not 3 months ago, because we were trying to be here 3 months ago and there was just so much transition that we weren't hearing back from people, and so I think that's inevitable, but we'll push to make things happen and go with the flow, so. Okay, so on to the next conversation.
Yeah, which I think we can keep pretty brief, since I think this will be at a later meeting, will probably be the focus of the implementation, but we're currently working on, as I said, an application form, so when applicants say, okay, I've been told I need a stormwater permit.
This is just an example of our draft
we've
application
been-
form.
So they know exactly what, the form will entail. We can go through that. So real briefly though, as we're kind of working on this form, I wanted to ask what the current process is for how does someone know that their project needs a stormwater permit and they make sure that it's sliding through the cracks? How do you guys get notified of projects that are over the 1 acre threshold?
I haven't heard of that.
Is that the?
Goes the rest.
I'm gonna bite my tongue on this one. And I'll talk to you off camera.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think that's what we need help. We need help figuring
need
out the
somebody.
process.
And we have it used to be the building department, but we have transitioned there too. And
So when when someone says, I'm gonna disturb an acre of land to build this big building.
they need a building permit.
What, so
Building
is the
inspector.
building
It's the
department
building
the very
department.
first place they go?
They have to pull their building permit.
But what if they're not building a building? What if they're just clearing a bunch of forest and?
They shouldn't be clearing a forest without coming to us first.
Who do they
But
come
they
to?
have to, I wanna say if it's an 8x8
Yeah.
structure,
Exactly.
I mean, even if it's a toy box.
Yeah,
they have to go to the building department. If you're laying a slab of concrete, they
Yeah.
have to go to the building department.
Okay.
And the building departments, like, they're federal and
Then you have
state
to planning
laws,
board
just
if you want
changed
to put a
last,
solar field.
Yeah.
just changed again too. They're
I think
Well,
So it's you
8 or 9 now instead of 6. They skipped 7 and now they're here.
So between the building department and the planning department, we think most things are covered. Like, if someone's putting in a solar field where there's no building, they're gonna come to the planning.
Right, and I think, and I don't know if the rest of the board would agree, that some things that should come to us don't always come to us in a timely manner, and there's not a lot of education
Yeah.
of how important the bylaws are for conservation.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like, oh, whatever. I don't fully understand, but I'm gonna vote yes anyways.
Yeah.
Like, and that's a problem. But that's just my personal opinion. I'm
Okay.
not speaking for the board.
And this is where, since your stormwater bylaw includes biosolids application, which is not, you know, in the name, it's not always intuitive.
Right.
How will someone know that
You need to
if
get the.
they need a permit if they're gonna apply biosolids? You know, that's another kind of, I guess, category of projects that needs to be.
What about an educational sheet?
Yeah, like on the website.
Like on the website, in hard copy for board members, just so, and all employees, in all of our departments, so they 100% understand exactly
Yeah.
what's expected of them from conservation, and there's no confusion, and yes, we're doing all these changes on you, but look, here's your educational sheet.
Yeah.
We're not just leaving you in the dust here on your own.
Yeah.
I think that would be great to have something for the building department and the planning department to both
And the
just, even just like
ZBA.
a quick, you know, do you think that it might need a permit, you know, just so that they, if they're the ones that truly are kind of
Trigger
projects are
it,
funneled through them, yeah,
Yeah.
just so that they know, and then they can hand you the form, you know, hand them the form, here's your stormwater application form, you also need to go before the Conservation Commission for this project.
Right, and the
But
conservation-
if they don't know, oh, 1 acre disturbance means something, there's a regulation that, you know, if you're ever audited, that EPA will
Doesn't the
follow.
building people know? that they-
Teresa's gone.
Oh, why she left?
Would you need, where you have your project activity on here, would you need to add in the one for the half acre by the pond?
Yeah, that'll have to change. Yep,
It's generic right now,
Yeah.
yes. we will-
Or yeah, right now, like, there's a checkbox for like, I disturb over an acre, I'm applying biosolids. So we'll have another checkbox that says, I'm in the Monpont Pond watershed. So that way, the form makes it very easy to understand, this is why I'm applying for a permit. Yeah, so we'll change that.
Wasn't there something that, when you guys were here the first time, or
Yeah.
maybe even it was when we had the video or something,
Yeah,
there was a list of fees or something?
yes.
Yeah, we did that.
Should the list of fees be added onto this?
Good question.
That's a good idea.
We had, right now, I think, let me see, I had put, I think I referenced the regulations, like, so it says, so in submission requirements on the back, the payment of the application
Okay.
and review fees, and then I said, see section 6E of the regulations. So that way, if it changes, you don't have to also change the form.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know, maybe the fees could be on the website too or something to make it a little easier for them.
As well.
Yeah. I thought about putting them there, but then I was like, what if they change? Then you have to change the form also.
No, I like Colleen's idea too, that they can be on the educational printout.
Yeah.
And your idea of being on
Yeah.
the website.
All right, the website's changeable, yeah.
Yeah.
Print out.
Right.
It's not like we're printing out so many of them, you know what I mean? And how hard is it
A lot of time.
how hard is it to really change a Google Doc and reprint a couple?
So, okay.
Recycled paper.
In terms of implementation, yeah. I mean, the big question that we really want to help you with is, once we get these documents solidified, how do we make sure you're
They're doing everything right.
Yeah, because, you know, that's
We
the
need them.
reason they're here.
So
The
the
reason
building
these
plans have
exist
to
is,
have it.
they're not gonna help anything if they're not actually being enforced. And not to mention, the EPA, I mean, it's theoretical, but the EPA could fine you guys if they found out that there was this, that the bylaw wasn't being enforced.
We really need to put an article on town meeting to have a conservation agent, even if it's
For
for
the
what's
water and
written, for what's written right now, as is, like, there's funds for the secretary and agents still in there, but that, and I don't know the details, that would be a selectman and assessor and a Sandy job. That's not a me job, that's out of my pay scale, to do it, but I really think conservation is in need of an agent sooner than later.
Yeah, I mean,
And
there's a lot of work.
especially stormwater and
Yeah.
other things, and even if we just had her part-time for the more technical things where your enforcement requires you to be licensed and requires you to have this certificate, X, Y, and Z, that the agent handles that, and then the board can still assist in the hours that we don't have the agent on. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I guess how many wetland permits do you typically get in a year?
Like,
Just
how many
think of
NOIs? What?
What do you mean?
Like, how many NOIs do you get?
They actually have to make it to us correctly before people call in and complain, like some of them. Like, and that's just, it's a lack of education
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah, right.
It's not, I don't think there's a single person that's, all right, so maybe one or two. But I don't think the majority of the residents or anybody else do things intentionally
Yeah.
when it comes to conservation or all the major changes that are happening. I really do think it's a lack of education.
Yeah.
Well, one of the 6 pieces of the MS4 is public outreach and education, and all of those educational messages, specifically surrounding phosphorus. We could make one of the educational messages, what permits do you need, you know, and it totally ties right in with wetlands too. A lot of it, is definitely like related as well.
There are so many free resources too for the town to tap in to stay in compliance with that.
Yes.
It's pretty amazing. Like, and then always worried about the budget and the dollar. That free's always good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those are the 2 that we can, kind of the big picture questions that we can revisit, like I said, once we get the application form, is how are we making sure projects get flagged? And then once you start to receive these stormwater applications, what is the plan to review? Are you able to get a part-time agent? You know, we also do technical reviews. If there's any way that we can use our existing contract coverage to assist in that, you know, we can start to kind of flesh out some of those options.
That's also on that.
So yeah, keep that on your radar, and we'll keep talking about that.
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah,
once-
we do have to find a way to.
Yeah, we have to figure out some way to make sure these projects are getting routed to you. And then, once we figure out how to get them routed to you, then we have to figure out how to review them. So, yeah. Well, keep that on your radar as you're talking to other boards. If you ever do, make sure they're educated and they know that this stormwater bylaw exists. And I think it's a great idea to have an educational fact sheet for the other boards, so we can see if we can fit that into our existing contract or figure out, I don't know, maybe that would come, you know, the contract ends in June and then there's another contract supposedly starting in July. So, you know, maybe we could put that in our scope for our July contract or something, if it can't fit into this one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
like to think ahead.
Oh, we can way ahead.
With town budgets, you have to.
You have to.
Yeah. All right, well, I guess we won't.
So we decided we'll come back January 25th, make sure Bob's available, get
Yeah.
the bylaw updates
Unless-
finalized at that meeting.
And we'll email if for some reason January 25th doesn't work.
Okay.
But otherwise, I guess we'll plan on it. Okay. Okay.
And this was very well done, as was the others and things when I was associate. Thank you for all the hard work that you do for us.
Thank you. Thanks for thanking us, and thank you all for all your comments and yeah, we couldn't have done it without your input, which is why we're here, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. many degrees is it outside right now?
I don't know.
Anybody have anything else for this meeting?
I have a,
8.
8? Is that what it is? All right.
You got remote start already?
No, I wish. That'd be nice. Oh,
Okay, what is
yeah, don't want to forget that.
going off of this, the next part of the agenda was secretarial. Not to go in detail, because to go in detail, we'd have to go into executive session. But would it be beneficial to draft a letter next meeting and possibly go into executive session to discuss it, to send off to the selectmen about the chair's concerns and of not having all the proper things we need as a board,
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
so they understand just how serious it is and how much extra work it is on yourself.
Yeah,
and
but obviously
the
not,
others.
yeah, we're not full-timers here, so.
Yeah, we can talk about it next meeting.
Yeah, because it's an employee issue though, it has to be posted as executive
Executive.
Okay,
session.
all right.
And thank you for all the extra work you do too, Kathy. And I don't mind putting it on record today that it's absolutely not fair, that it's ongoing.
It's,
we don't really have
it's
fixed.
not gonna be ongoing much longer.
But we're still at square one again. It's,
Well,
and I also,
we can talk about it next meeting.
yeah, just to,
Okay. Approve the minutes? Do we have to accept them?
We don't have enough.
Okay. Any bills? No bills?
We do have, bills, because I did send some off to, pay the Halifax reporter, $90. I think, yeah.
Okay.
Can we make a motion?
I put much we pay the bill for $90.
Yes.
Oh, second. Sorry.
all approved. I
All
All in
fair.
favor?
I approve.
And that's it.
All right.
Motion to close the meeting?
I put a motion, close the meeting.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
All right. All right, we're all set.
All right, Ryan.